Hello adventurer. So you created your landscape and your texture looks boring. Do you want to populate it with vegetation but you don't know where your forest will go or where your plains will be? So we'll learn how to create an ecosystem so your landscape looks more lively. This is the landscape that we created in the previous video. We created our shape, textured it with slope blending and all that auto material stuff, but we all know how boring that can be. So we'll create an interesting texture. This one is built the same, just the seed is a bit different, that's why some of the shapes might differ. And the texture on it is based on the vegetation. You see these brown spots here? These are our forest and this green is our meadows or the plains. Let me turn on the foliage. So this is where our forest will be and these are our meadows with flowers and stuff. Then there is our snow which is melted from one side. So to scatter these, as usual, we'll be using Gaea, and to be specific, Arboreal Node in Gaea. Also, what we are about to do, it does not matter where your landscape is created, as long as you have your height map, the process is the same. Now, usually when we import landscape in Unreal, we already have our height map. But what if it's an old project? What if the file got lost? No need to panic. If we don't have it, we'll extract it. Sounds fun. How do you do that? Well, to do that we'll use a secret menu. There are no secret menu. You're right. We'll go to landscape mode and under sculpt there is our height map. Right click, import export, choose where to put your file and export. Congratulations, you have your height map. So now let's move to the next step. Alright, here we are in Gaea and the first step would be to bring our height map in. Now, if you have a single height map, we'll use a file node. Browse and select your height map. There you have your landscape. But if you have your landscape in tiles, then we'll need the tile input. Again, browse and select any of the tiles and it will recreate your landscape. Now, after importing, we need to match the scale. For that, we'll go to the Build tab and at the bottom under Terrain Definition, we have our scale and height. Here, change the scale to whatever scale your landscape is. We don't need to change the height here because this is not the actual height of the landscape. This is the maximum height it can get. Our actual height was 512 meter, which is standard for Unreal. But since it was normalized, the 512 meter here is represented as the maximum height, which is 2600 meter. So we need to clamp it to 500 meter to match the height. Don't forget to check this enforce linear gamma. So we need to change the clamp maximum, which right now is 100, which means 2600 meter. We don't need to convert our 500 meter to a percentage, just type 512 m, which means meter. Perfect. Now that we have our height map, we can start with our Arboreal node. Then append the Arboreal node. Alright adventurer, before attempting the quest any further, you need to complete the Arboreal node quest. You can find the link to it in the upper right corner. Basically, Arboreal can create 3 types of vegetation with different styles based on a bunch of parameters. What we need to pay attention to is the flowing water. So basically we can create vegetation that is avoiding the flows or vegetation that loves the flows. So the greedy plants that love water would be seeking the flows and vegetation like trees would be avoiding the flows. That being said, let's move to the project files of the landscape. So in the previous video we created all this. So this is the basic shape of the landscape and this is what we'll be covering today. Cartography has a Patreon exclusive episode which is already uploaded, so we won't be covering this. We created a boring texture earlier, but we'll be doing it again with vegetation. So let's come to vegetation. We have basically 4 types of vegetation. So we have our trees, our shrubs, we have our grass and our meadows. So we'll be creating all that. Orange nodes are our arboreal nodes. This is for trees, this is for shrubs, this is for grass, and this is for our meadows. And we have different variation of these. We have 2 variation for our trees, 3 for shrubs, 3 for grass, and 4 for our meadows. So the arboreal node needs 2 inputs. The first one is the landscape itself. The second input it needs is the dead zone. So dead zone are areas where you don't want any vegetation to be. So basically our lake, river, and snow. So to create this dead zone, we took our lake hard mask and we took our lake depth mask, we auto leveled it, and then we combined them. So this is our combined water. Ignore this one. This basically subtracts the river from the snow. We'll use this in textures, but it's not important here. After water, we combine it with our snow. So this is our dead zone. So to all these arboreal nodes, the first input is our landscape and the second input is the dead zone. So let's take a look at our trees. So our trees are avoiding the flows. I'll go over the important parameters that we need to look out for. So the first thing you should notice is the trees are avoiding the flows. Alright, and then we have some wild growth. Some of the trees start growing into the flows. Then we are limiting the slope and altitude where the tree should grow. Now we can also do this in procedural foliage spawner, but the reason we are doing it here is because we'll use the mask from this tree and use that as a texture. And finally we added some patches and a bit of chaos. Now we only have one species. Now we can go ahead and duplicate this and have many species of trees with different seeds, but that would be a bit complex. So let's stick with one tree species for now. Now let's take a look at the trees, or rather the mask where the trees are. So each pixel here represents a tree. So now it's plant per pixel. Now that would limit some things. The main one would be we can control the density up to a certain amount. So the maximum density with this mask is having a tree everywhere. Now since it's plant per pixel, every pixel has a tree, so we can go the same density as this or lower. We cannot go any higher than this. So to counter that, we duplicated it, kept all the same settings, and only changed the style from small to large. The most noticeable difference would be in the mask, so pay attention here. Alright. So this time all those pixels are expanded and they cover some of the surrounding area as well. So now this will have a higher density and we can control the density in Unreal. So that concludes our trees. Next are our shrubs. These are the shrubs that grow in the forest. So same as trees, we are using avoid the flows and limited them to a certain altitude and slope. Now this slope is slightly more than the trees. Then have a lot of patches, small amount of chaos, and a lot of smoothing. Now that is our first shrub. Now this shrub is distributed throughout the forest. So now we have 2 more shrubs. Now this shrub has the same setting as before, just a different seed. So you can use this as one species of shrub and this as another species of shrub. And as we did with our trees, we'll do the same to our shrubs. So this is the same as this one, the original, and we only change from small to large. So this way it will cover a larger area. Now after shrubs is our main grass. Now grass is different from trees because it will now seek the flows. Now again, if you notice here, so the place where the river is, there is no grass because we added river as the dead zone. So this is where that dead zone is important. So same as trees, there is a bit of wild growth. The thing to note here are the flows. So we increase the flows. This parameter behaves differently depending on whether we are seeking or avoiding the flows. Because if we are seeking the flows and we are increasing the flows, that means there will be more of that vegetation. But if we are avoiding the flows and we increase the flow parameter, that means the flows are getting wider, so there are more flows, hence less vegetation that is avoiding the flows. That's all our main grass. Now another thing to notice is for our trees we are using here conifer. So this is the visual representation for conifer, and for all the others we are using shrubs. Also for the grass, because we will obviously control our density of grass from Unreal. So that's why we are using large by default. Now along with the main grass we have two different species of grass. We'll call them subgrass A and subgrass B. So the subgrass A, this is main grass which is everywhere, and the subgrass is a little rare. It is not going everywhere, just in certain areas. So for that, we have some patches and a lot of chaos. So we get this. And for our grass B, again this time, this is more like grass in certain areas, but it's spread out everywhere. And this grass is more concentrated in certain areas, so it's not present everywhere, but if it is present, then it's present with a higher density. Now, although it says grass, you don't have to limit yourself to using only grass in those areas. These areas can also be used to spawn other species like flowers. And then finally we have our flow vegetation. This is all the other vegetation that is short-lived and needs more water. So basically these are our meadows. And flowers are a great example of a species that grows here. This is the same as grass, just a lower density, and we are using small for the style, and we have a bit of wild growth. We are not increasing the flows for this one because these species need more water, so they are concentrated more near the water. So this is one variation of this one. Then we change it from small to large for our textures and to control the density. Same as we did with all those vegetations. Then we have two different variations, sparse A and sparse B. So sparse would mean lower density. So for that we increased the patches and added a bit of chaos. So this is the same as we did with grass sub A and grass sub B. So these species will be in the flows, but not as much as the main flow species. That's why I added a lot of patches. And for final one, we maxed out the patches and chaos. So there is very little of these species. So these can be the rare species. That's all about our vegetation. Now we'll use our vegetation to drive our textures. Let's go back. Let me load all the textures first. We'll pin this as an underlay. This is our landscape without any vegetation. As we have done before, our first node would be the texture node. Make sure you don't have multiple texture nodes because you don't need that much variation. We also created a portal with this texture node, so later all the other setmap nodes would be connected to this texture node. So the first step is our usual slope blending. We took this rock texture and we took this sort of grass textures and blended them with the slope. This time we are taking the lower slopes, that really low, 0 to 17 degrees. It won't cover much, and that's exactly what we want, because for the actual grass we'll use a different texture. And then for our flows, we are using this sort of damp rock texture. And the mask for this is a bit interesting. We are using our slope mask and our flow mask, and then we are combining them with the multiply and finally blend it with the final slope. So it looks a bit nicer than the usual slope blending. Okay, I mean, I don't think we need this. We can directly feed this one here. Alright, after that is our grass. So our Arboreal node gives three outputs. So the first one is the 3D output with our vegetation baked in. So you can use this as a mesh in far distance, so you don't have a performance loss, and you can have trees at far distance. The second and third are important. The second is the trees output. So this will give us the actual mask. So this is the mask that we'll use in our game engine or your 3D app to scatter that vegetation. The final one is the color guide. Now this is to be used exclusively for textures. Now this is the same as this mask, just a bit expanded for our textures. So we have made portal with each of these. and we can connect these portals right here. So the first one is our main grass. So this sort of green texture is for our main grass, and we combined it with the main grass as its mask and 100% blend. So to our rock we added the first grass, which is the main grass. Then we added the subgrass A and subgrass B with different colors. So this is subgrass A, this is subgrass B. Just so we can differentiate between three different type of grass species. Here you can see all of them. So our rock, main grass is added, then subgrass A is added here. Okay, and then subgrass B is added. So we have blended our grass, and after our grass is our snowfall. We created the snowfall mask in the first part of this video. We are simply using the snowfall output and using the max method. So only the white part is added, which is our snow. Now, after snow, we add our water. So this is our combined water. This is the map we created earlier when we were creating dead zone. So this time there is no water on snow because we subtracted it here. And we used that as a mask to combine the water. And this is the lake water depth, which is what we are using here. We simply plugged it in a clutter node and made 3 handles. So this is the dark watercolor, which is the deeper part of the lake, and this is the color for our rivers. So after combine, we have our river and we have our lake. So far in our texture, we added our 3 types of grass, we added our snowfall, and we added our water. So what's left? Our shrubs, our trees, and our flow species. Flow species are our meadows. And then we added flow sparse A and flow sparse B. So these are flowers, so we are choosing 2 different types of flowers. So one are red color and another are yellow color. After using the mask, this is where the red is. Let me zoom in here. So these are our meadows with the red flower, and then there are our meadows with yellow flower. And remember, we are not using 100% blend because we don't want to lose that grass from there. We just want a hint of those colors. When this is for texture, when we are simulating it, we'll obviously use those masks. So that is our meadows. And the last thing left are our trees. Before we color our trees, we need to change the underlay. Underlay is the landscape upon which the texture is applied. So right now it's applied on the final terrain, but we want to apply it on our trees. So here we are combining our trees and our shrubs. So we combined it here with the max method. So the trees and shrubs are both combined, and we'll use this as our underlay. So we'll press G here. So this purple box here says it is the underlay. Alright, now the texture looks a bit different because the underlay is changed. No worries, we'll fix that. So for our shrubs and our trees, let me just underlay this for a while. We'll change it later. Okay, so this is our multifractal. We change the scale to be really small so that when we apply Heightmap we have different patches. We added a noise, so there is a bit of noise added to it, and then a Heightmap. So first we are combining the shrubs, so we use the shrub as the mask and combined it. So there are our shrubs combined, and now this looks weird because we don't have the correct underlay. Let me underlay the shrubs. There it is, our shrubs, and after the shrubs are our trees. So the same as we did for our shrubs, a multifractal, noise, and a Heightmap. So this is for our trees, and we are using the tree mask here. Again, change the underlay to this. G is the hotkey for underlay, and there you have it. Our landscape is ready and textured. Before closing and moving to Unreal, let me tell you what mask you would need to texture this. So if you have created the texture in Gaea, then the step is easy. Then you need all the mask of the combined nodes here. So go through each one of them and mark all those nodes for export. So basically all the arboreal nodes are our exports. So if you see this orange circle around here, that means it's marked for export. If we move to the build tab, under vegetation, which is the name of this graph, we have all the arboreals. And remember, since we only need the mask from it, we are using PNG8. And here usually you have something like this, all, which means it will export all the outputs, the height map, the mask and the color mask. But we only need the mask. First mark none and only choose the trees. So that's what I did for all of these. To change all the mask in vegetation graph, we'll take this and choose a format. So let's say 16-bit PNG. So all of those are changed to 16-bit PNG. All of those are changed to 16-bit PNG. Let's change it back to PNG8. Alright, and now we are ready to export. So start building. Alright, here are all the masks from the Arboreal node. Alright, here we are in Unreal Engine. This is the landscape. It has everything simulated based on the maps that we created just now. There is our grass. So this is our main grass, and then there's our grass sub A, and this brown one is our grass sub B. There should be some in higher density around here somewhere. Okay, there it is. You can see all three, the grass main, sub A and B. And we have all the other kinds of vegetation, like these are our plains, so there are flowers, some weed, and there is our forest. And inside the forest, we have our different shrubs, and finally our trees. Now let me turn off the foliage for now, and let's take a look at our texture. So this is our cliff texture, then there is our plains, and we have green color for our grass, and then there are some patches of gray here. And these brown patches are from our trees, so this is our forest. And rest is the same, the river flow and the lake and the snowfall is just the same. So let's start creating our texture. So first let's save it. So we'll go to the landscape mode and we'll delete this beautiful texture. Right click, clear all the paint. Alright, a blank canvas. So the first thing we did was the cliff texture. So right click, fill layer, and there are cliffs everywhere. Then we'll click some other layer, right click and import. Let's expand the layers. Make sure you have a layer info assigned to all the layers that we are going to use. Now here we will import all our masks. Now you can go back and take a look at what we did in Gaea and export all those masks here. So let's do the easy one first. There is our lake. Okay, lake mask. Then there is flow top. So this is lake and we'll use this for our rivers. Select the river mask. Next our snow. There is our snowfall. Then we'll use the moss for our main grass. So arboreal grass main. There it is. And then for the forest we'll use the tree mask. We'll use the large tree mask. So these are the texture layer. Beside all these layers, I created some empty dead layers. So if you look at them right here, all these layers are not connected to any texture. So let's call them dead layers. They will be used just to hold that mask data. So we'll use the output from the Arboreal node. So the tree will go in here, shrub ABC, flow ABC. They will not contribute to the texture, but rather we'll use this data in procedural foliage spawner when we are spawning things. So since we are doing this, let's also import all those. So our tree is tree large and our shrub ABC should be, there it is, shrub A, and then shrub, it is shrub B and this is shrub C. Oh my god, it's auto-saving. And then our flow. So flow A, flow B, and flow C should be. There it is. Am I missing something? I don't think so. The grass is missing, but we'll use grass map for that rather than the procedural foliage spawner. So we are skipping the grass here. Now don't forget to untick all these. You don't want to export everything at once. And one more important thing I forgot to mention, under paint. So all these layers that are used exclusively just to hold that data would be no weight blended. So weight blended are layers that can change the influence of other layers. So if we have a forest layer everywhere, then we put a cliff layer on top, then the cliff layer will replace the forest layer. But with non-weight blended, will not do such a thing. So that's why we are using non-weight blended for all these. So let's go back here. And the first thing we are going to do is import the moss. Before that, since I already had this map, the height file here is gone. Just take this and load a Heightmap file here. It does not have to be the same Heightmap, just make sure it's the same resolution. So you can see this grid, it's matching exactly our landscape. That means we are good. Don't forget to untick this, otherwise it will import another landscape. Now we'll import the moss. Before that, ground A first. Ground A is the slope mask. It covers the lower slopes, but later most of it will be replaced by the grass and the forest layers. Since we will be overlapping everything on top, so those layers are free to manipulate this layer however they want. So now our moss. Alright. Then our forest. Looking good. Then our rivers. Our lake. Our snow. And finally all these data layers. Now since they are not changing anything, we can import all of them together at once. Now let's save it. Alright, there it is, our beautiful texture. Since we used slope blending for our ground A, so that is also shining through our main grass layer. So now let's take a look at our vegetation. Alright, everything looks good. Now comes the exciting part, the vegetation, which we have to cover in the next video. There is a lot to explain, so it's better to have a dedicated video for that. And unlike this one, the next video will be coming really soon.